Hi there, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use the DJI Mavic 3 to do dolly zoom shots in the sky like these. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed those clips and I hope they've given you some inspiration as to what you can do with a drone like the DJI Mavic 3. You may have noticed that some of those clips, if you're watching on a bigger screen, looked a little bit blurred. That's because I was zooming in too much just to make a point of how creative this can be. So really, if you're thinking about it, if you're filming in say 5K, which is this big, and you're outputting to 1080, then you can only really zoom into that point. But what I did, I zoomed in past the 1080 stage. So I've output this in 1080, so I went past that 1080 stage just to show you how far you can push this, because if you're using a 6K or an 8K camera such as one of these, then obviously you can push it that bit further. So I just wanted to illustrate that. But really what you can do with the Mavic 3 or any film camera like the Air 2S, if you're shooting 5K, you can actually zoom in quite a bit from 5K, which goes to 4K, which goes to 1080. So you've got that much to zoom. So quick history on the dolly zoom. I've used a dolly zoom on location when I work with a great team from Pinewood Studios. You can see in the photos here, the old style of having to do a dolly zoom was actually on rails like that, like train tracks with a tripod on. And what you'd have to do is actually push the camera along while zooming in or out, depending on what you're doing. So if you were pulling back on the camera, you would have to zoom into the subject. That would keep them exactly the same in the frame, but the background would change. And the same if you were going forward, you'd have to turn the zoom to widen it so that as you get closer, the person would stay the same again. So that was the old way of doing it. And on these two films, you may have seen them. One of them was an old Alfred Hitchcock film, Vertigo. And then the other one was Jaws, which you've all seen, but you can see that that effect is actually really quite good. It's great. So if you can actually incorporate this into some of your shots, some of your shoots, even weddings, things like that, it's going to really kind of impress people. But don't overdo it because it will look stupid. Use it maybe once or twice. I think in the Jaws film, you only saw it once. So the old school way of doing it was a tripod on tracks or whatever you had on tracks to be able to do that while zooming manually at the same time. Very difficult to do. Now, I've used it on smaller tracks like this, though. This is like a miniature version of what you saw on the Jaws films and Vertigo. So this is just a standard kind of slider that you get with the camera. This is the Panasonic S1H, shoots 6K. So if I want to do that similar effect with a product in a product shoot, I would use this. So this is, at the moment it's on manual, so it's a manual slider, but I've also got a bit that will take this weight away and I can put a timer on there and I can use it all through an app, through an automated device. So I can set this to do anything I want. And I use this for the automated version for time lapses when I'm doing day to night. So you can see in the photos here, I've had them on location. So I can actually have this to go maybe move a millimeter every sort of few seconds or every minute to do a really slow time lapse, and I can turn it at the same time. So these are fantastic. So if you wanted to use a 6K camera like this, have a product at the end, and you could do the same thing. But if you wanted to zoom, you would have to do it and zoom at the same time to keep the product in. Now that's very difficult, okay? So if you wanted to actually do something, let's say you had something here, you would move it forward and then you would zoom out. As you move forward, you'd have to go wider and wider and wider, keeping the subject the same size while the background either moves in or out. Very difficult. So that's the beauty of filming in 5K, 5.1K or 5.4K with the Air 2S, because you don't have to do that manual zooming. If you're outputting at 1080, everything can be done in post-production. And that's what I'm going to show you now, because without having to do all of that, you can actually do it absolutely perfectly. You probably saw on those two films that it wasn't perfect. It kind of jittered about and jolted. That's because you've got a cameraman having to do this as it goes through. Being able to do it in post-production from 5K or 6K down to 1080, you can do it as immaculate as you want using a computer. So let's go in now and I'll quickly show you how I did a couple of those clips. Okay, so here we are in Vegas 19. Now I've been using Vegas for well over a decade. Really love it. It's what I started with and it's what I know, so I'm using that Just bear in mind this can be done in any video editing software that's got the ability to actually zoom in and crop, which is most of them, whether you use Premiere Pro or something else. It doesn't matter, you can do this anywhere. So this is the timeline. These are all the clips that I took with the Mavic 3. I will quickly say that it's so stable in the sky. It's absolutely brilliant. So I had no problem at all getting some, and this was actually, this shot here of the lighthouse, which you saw was super stable. That was actually done yesterday and it was fairly windy. You can just about see me down there. But it was actually quite windy and I was thinking this isn't going to go very well. I'm going to have to do a lot of stabilization, but it actually worked and it went so smoothly. I've done a very small bit of stabilization in After Effects, but really it was absolutely perfect. It was fantastic. You can see there just how smooth that is. It's just brilliant. So it gave me a really good clip to start with. So let's quickly show you how you can actually get a clip that goes, let's zoom in on that a bit. So it goes like this, and the camera's just zooming in and we stop there. So really what we want to do is get the initial clip here, the end frame, because that's the very last one. So we want to get to a point where we just zoom into that. So this bit here has got to fill the frame all the time. That's the last frame. So we want the whole thing to stay like that. So what we do is, remember here, we're clipping just at the base of that window ledge there and just at the top of this bit here. So all we do is go to the first clip and then we just zoom in. So on here, we go to here. Now this is the cropping tool. You can see here, I've already cropped it a bit. If I undo that and push restore, we go back, you can see, because I filmed in 5.1K, it's on a different aspect ratio. I think it's 17:9. I want to output it 16:9. So I've actually created a default, one of my, here you can see Mavic 3 5.1K to UHD. Just click that and I've already done a template for that. So it automatically creates this, so it fits in the UHD frame. So let's go back in. So what I've got to do now is get this. If I go create what's down here, I've got to have, they're called keyframes. So I've already got a keyframe at the beginning, which is the start of the video. I want one at the end. So if I double click, that's put a keyframe in at the end. And that's what I want to end up like. So remember, we've got just below the window ledge there and just above the aerial thing there. So if I go back here, I now press Alt on, this is in Sony Vegas, you'll have to work out how to do it on your software. But if I go and press Alt, that will keep the same aspect ratio and drag this down so that the top just gets to just above there, and then take this corner so it just goes to below the window frame just there, a little bit more about there. And then if I go back here for a second, I can see that the central point here is exactly above that nodule there. So if I go back, and then all I've got to do is drag this along to there. So I don't want it to move up and down, I want it to move left and right. So over here, I can actually set it so that it will only move left and right, it won't go up and down. And all I've got to do is zoom in a bit and drag this till it gets over the central point there. So that's it. So I know that I've got that just about right there. I know that's just about right there. I know we're central. So if I come out of this, and then you can see here, if I put it to best quality, you can see the quality is pretty good, but to play it, I'll have to go in preview because I've got a proxy file. So if I now press spacebar and play this, this should stay fairly stable and the background should change. So let's press play. How cool is that? That's worked pretty well. You can see there, it went in and out, it kind of breathed. So you can see that moving away from the top, and then at the end it comes back. So what that means is we've got a central point here where the camera either changes or something like that. So what you can actually do, if you've got the time to do it, and I've done it on mine, you can actually go along and create keyframes. So I've put a keyframe there, and if there's any changes that you can see between the first keyframe, so we look at the ledge there, if we look at that and then look at the new keyframe, you can see it's moved away from the ledge. So what I can actually do is do Alt again and just move this back up and do this all the way along, and then just bring this over to the center, and that should be fine. Then I can go over to here a little bit more, do another one. You can see it's moved away again. So I'll bring that up to the base of the ledge, bring it to the center. I'm not going to worry too much about the top, but this is just to give you an idea of what you have to do. Go along a bit further and you can see it's moved away again. So Alt and drag it up from the corner and then centralize it. Let's go a bit further. I'd normally do quite a few keyframes, but I'm just going to rush this a little bit for the sake of the tutorial. Bring it up to the bottom of the ledge, bring it over, then another one here. Bring it up to the base of this is where it starts to come back into, it's not so bad. Bring it up to the base of the ledge. I've just done let's just make sure that's still there, yep. So this one, it's up to the ledge, and then just bring it to the center. Then another keyframe here. And just bring it up to the base and bring it over to the center. I'm not sure how much better this will look. Do one more keyframe here. And it's just a small tad now because it's breathing back in, and then over to the center. And then we'll have a look and see what that looks like. So I'll save that. Start at the beginning. A little bit, see the top's moving, but the bottom's not that much. So you can be as accurate as you want with this. You can play about with those keyframes to get it absolutely perfect. So I could have adjusted the top as well, but you can see the central portion of this is staying pretty similar. So that to me looks really good. Let's try and play it in best quality. It'll probably jutter a bit because it's a big, yeah, it'll jutter a bit. So it's not going to play in perfect quality. Let's do the preview again. And you can see how the background moves, and it's just fantastic. So all you've got to do is fly the drone towards an object or away from an object, and then do everything else in post-production. Obviously you can't get in the sky and zoom a camera unless you've got a crane and about 20 crew and things like that. So the ability to be able to do this with a drone like the Mavic 3 or the Air 2S is amazing, because you don't have to bother zooming. You don't need a zoom lens. And obviously the higher the resolution, if you've got 5K, you can then zoom right down to 1080 to output at 1080. So it's fantastic. You've got all that leeway to play with. So let's have a quick look at the second clip. So again, this one was filmed on the Mavic 3. So it's in a 17:9 aspect ratio. So we've got to go in and crop that first of all and move it down to a UHD. Come back out. That should be then done. Yep. So you can see here, again, look how, now this has had no stabilization. This is straight from camera. Look how stable that is. And it was quite windy. So for me, that is super impressive. It's just stunning. And it gives me such a good platform to work from to do this actual clip. So let's again go to the last clip. So that's there. So you can see here, I'm going to take some points like this bit of green grass here, and then I've got to work out where I'm actually going to go. And I'll show you how to make that a bit easier, because obviously this is further away. We need that to fill the frame to match the last frame. Okay, so let's go into the crop tool again. And I've got this kind of, I could bring up a grid, but in fact, let's bring up the grid. So let's go into the crop tool. The grid doesn't work on here, so forget that. So I'm going to use this big F here to work out what I'm going to do. So again, I'm going to put a keyframe at the end, and that's the last one. But I want this building, which is St Anne's Church in Abbotsbury, I want it to stay the same size throughout. So I've got to go back to the beginning and zoom to that size. So what I'm going to do is just make some visual kind of ideas here. So you see the F line here along the top of the middle bit of the F, that goes along that ledge on the church, and that gap there is almost the same as this gap. So I'm going to bear those in mind, and then down here there's a little bit of rough grass. So let's go back to the beginning, and what I'm first of all going to do is drag it right up to this little bit of rough grass there. So that goes to about there, and then I've got to drag this side down so that this bit of the F goes over this bit of the actual building. So let's drag that down to about there, and then again I've got to bring this over, goes down a bit more to there. So that's kind of rough, but I don't know if it's central or not. So let's go back to the end bit, and the central dot here is actually down the left hand side of this first pillar. So if I go back again, all I've got to do now is move this dot over the central part, or over the end part of that pillar. So that's about as close as I can get it with a really quick kind of play about. So let's go back and now try it. Let's take the grid off. Now let's just try that from the beginning and see how it looks. That's pretty perfect. Haven't got to do any real keyframes or anything. You see it breathes in and out again, but I quite like that. And I think that's close to what I actually put on the start of this video. So it does breathe a bit. If you wanted to get it perfect, you could keep this. So at the beginning, this bit of mud here, there's hardly any gap. At the end, there's no gap, but in the middle, it breathes in and out. But I quite like that effect. So you can see there, look at the background. It just looks like a 3D photo or something. It looks amazing. So that one I don't think needs any keyframes. It's really, really good. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that quick tutorial. It's something that's fairly easy to do. Once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to do. So let's just say you've got the Mavic 3 in the air. You've got an object that you're going to be flying towards. Here's an old hard drive. So what you want to do is get it in the air and put it on the cine mode so it flies really slowly and accurately. Try and choose a really kind of slow wind day if you like. So It will work in light winds, reasonably heavy-ish winds, but really if you can get a really good clear day, go out and shoot a ton of these while it's like that. So all you need to do is fly slowly towards the object you're wanting to do this with, and then stop. And because this has got a fairly wide lens as well, you can actually get quite close, but obviously just be careful. If you're doing it in sport mode, you're not going to have any obstacle avoidance, so you could smash into it. So use one of the other two modes. So you just fly up to it, stop, and then I do one back out the other way as well, and do it enough time so that you get a really good kind of copy. I would do 3 or 4 shots where you make sure that you get a really good steady shot in. And if it does come out a little bit jittery, then obviously you can run it through some warp stabilizer in After Effects or whatever software you've got. But generally, if you, like you saw in that church shot, you shouldn't really need to do it. If you get a really nice smooth shot in and keep practicing, then you'll get that, and you'll just have to do the keyframes along, and the rest of it's pretty easy, pretty simple. So I hope this really helps, but just imagine what you can actually do with that. So you've got the Mavic 3 in the air, or the Air 2S or whatever. If you've got 5K drone, outputting at 1080, those are the sort of things you can do. So picture what you could do, something like a wedding, or if you're doing a music video. I've used this on a music video of my son's friend, and it worked really well, and he got loads of really good comments for it. So practice this, learn how to do it, but like I said at the beginning, use it wisely and don't overdo it, because if your video is filled with that, it soon becomes boring. So just use it once, maybe twice, depending on the length of the actual production you're making, and just keep it at that, and just have that little wow factor throughout, and then put other kind of skills in the video along with that. So I really hope you enjoyed this video and it's given you some inspiration to get out with your drone and try it for yourself, get in the editing suite and try and get these similar sort of effects with your own projects. And if you found it useful and enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share it with your friends and leave a comment below. I'd really appreciate it, because it really helps the channel and it inspires me to go out and do more things like this. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.